Oh, really?
Okay, so anyway, what had happened basically was the fact they were coming down to this new town, and they had a house there already and everything. Came down, they moved into the house, everything was going really well, and when I was 3 months old, my father died, and that would not have happened today, but in those days, medicine was a little bit on the different side, and everything was a bit staggered there, so there was no income, and for a little while, there was a problem as regards what would happen, and my mother found that it was all too hard to take and preferred to walk away from the situation. This is what she did, and the family decided to look after me, and my grandmother finally took over me, and we moved to a little village and into a cottage, and we moved in, with her and hardly any space and no commodities and all that sort of thing. Very different from what she was used to. And in this situation there, we sorry, I've stopped me for a second.
That's all right. That's good.
So, okay, right.
You're doing really well. You're doing very well. It's good. Yeah.
In that situation there, it's a bit on the primitive side. And anyway, the thing was that she did her best, and I did well. I was quite happy there, really. And the thing that I didn't really take too much notice was that she always prayed at night. Every night she prayed, and we went through that period there when that happened. And my games and things were, when I say games, were not games. They were everything indoors. I sort of built model aeroplanes and flew them, and built metal things, metal models and all that sort of thing. And we went through okay like that. And she sent me to Sunday school. And when I went to Sunday school, I was stood out in so much that this was only a small Sunday school. There's only probably about a dozen of us. I stood out because I remembered the story that the vicar told us the next day. Nobody else had any idea at all. When we got to the age of 12, I was baptised. Sorry, when I got to the age of 12, I was baptised, and then I was confirmed. And when I was confirmed, I should have been filled with the Holy Spirit. That was according to the actual, what was supposed to happen. But in the Anglican Church, it doesn't happen. It's just words. And you just assume it's all happened. So this happened, and there were changes there. I went back to the actual system again, except I then went from actually ringing the bell, which was quite interesting to start with. I soon got the hang of that. I rang the bell and lit the candles and did all those sorts of things, put up hymn numbers and all that sort of thing. So it all went on like that for quite a while, and everything was good. And then finally our cottage was condemned, and they gave us a house, which was a prefab actually, which was in the town of Hemel Hempstead. So I was moved from there to Hemel Hempstead, and we moved in there, and everything there went quite well for a while. And then on one situation, I did a few things and they hadn't worked out, and I'd got a good job and everything had sorted out like that, and been through a few jobs, and anyway, everything was going okay, but somehow I hadn't gone back to church. I think I did a couple of times, and then I actually spent Sunday mornings actually training a German Shepherd, and with a nice young lady with me who was my friend's daughter, which was interesting. And anyway, everything was going well, and then I suddenly found out everything wasn't really well, and I was dissatisfied. And anyway, I met somebody, and they had a Jesus badge on, and I thought, this is a bit strange, and I spoke to them about it, and we had a chat about it, and they were very enthusiastic about it. And I couldn't understand, how they were enthusiastic. I wasn't. And they went to this other church, which was a very different church entirely. It shattered me because the guy didn't have a dog collar on. He had no collar, had no gowns or anything like this, but it was completely different. And I was amazed how the people were really taken back by what was happening. And I'd been to a church earlier on. Actually, it was the day of Pentecost, Pentecostal being preached in an Anglican church. And then I went to this church, and they preached on a non-Anglican situation on this same thing. And the reality of this, I couldn't believe it. And I went through that, and this changed my direction completely. I suddenly found this church which I, felt completely happy in. So I went ahead in there, and then after that, this suddenly happened. I had this feeling I wanted to drop everything and go across to Australia and, say, okay, do something there different. And I had a good job, and it was one of those situations, difficult situation, because I had actually, my grandmother had passed away, and I had the actual accommodation that she was in as such, and it was a council thing, so I had accommodation for life there. And so accommodation was settled. I had a fantastic car, had exactly what I wanted, and I had a job which about 3 years previously, the manager called me in and said, I've got a slight problem here, would you do something for us? Would you mind moving into management? Which was quite okay, doubled my wages. So everything was working well there. And
Yep. Can your feet are squeaking when you're twisting?
Sorry?
When you're turning, your feet are squeaking on the metal bars, and it's quite loud. So when you're twisting, you're going like this.
Am I? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So just be aware of that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll keep going. Just go back. Just take back one little step about when you're in middle management.
Okay. Sorry. So what was that?
You were talking about middle management.
Okay. Yeah. I'd sort of moved into management, so that was good. So everything was working really well. And I was looking at this Australia business, and it didn't really seem good in some ways. And I felt it would be a challenge. So I moved to Australia. When I moved to Australia, I stayed with some people, and they were Christians, and they had their own meetings, all these sorts of things, but they were a bit primitive. They were rather unhappy about anybody if they came up with anything which wasn't King James English. And they are sort of very strict in a few other things, very sort of strange situation. And that was okay. And I got a job, which was in Brisbane. This was in Nambour. I got a job and I moved backwards and forwards. And anyway, that worked out okay. But I was in Glad Tidings Tabernacle. And one of the meetings was just a normal meeting. And at the end of the meeting, a guy who was known as Mr. Pentecost in the States was preaching, and I didn't even know that. I was actually in a youth group, believe it, at that stage, and things were going well there, and they were going to have a camp, and I thought, well, maybe I might get baptised in the Holy Spirit then. So anyway, everything was going okay in this meeting, and at the end it was a fairly, uneventful meeting as far as I'm concerned. And he said, well, does anybody want to be filled with Spirit? Come out. And I went out to the front, and he touched me and I exploded. And it was absolutely unbelievable. I just never had anything like it. It changed everything completely. And I went home, and where I was staying, actually I had a girlfriend at the time, and she was Christian as well, of course, at this stage. And I couldn't really get to her other than ringing her, and the people in where I was staying at this place in Brisbane were not Christians as such. So I couldn't say anything to anybody, and it's very, very difficult to speak in English. And anyway, it went on like that. This was fantastic. And the job I was in actually was quite interesting, because when I came over, I shared my information, if you like, with Australia House, and they weren't very happy with it. So I had to write it all out. So I got my secretary to do it 3 times before I got it right. So I got it right. When I came to Australia and I finally got this job, they said, this is not acceptable. You're going to have to go through the actual university. There's a section of the university you can take, and if you pass that, okay, that's all right. So anyway, I was waiting for this to get the information on when they were going to arrange this course for me there and timing for me. And anyway, I'd sort of sat back And when I got back to my job on the Monday, my provisional license would be cancelled. And I couldn't understand why. And when I got to work, they said, "Hi, do you know something? The guy before you did that job, and he did turn up 4 times after they'd set it up, and now you've done the same thing. So, you've had it." And I thought, well, okay, this is going to be rather interesting. I've just been filled with the Holy Spirit, and suddenly everything sort of collapsed. So anyway, I looked at the letter which they sent me, and they said it's anticipated that the exam will be on this date. And as far as I'm concerned, it has to be confirmed, and they hadn't confirmed it. So I just told them that, I just wrote and said, look, you didn't confirm it, how was I to know? And of course, everybody said they're not going to even accept it, even look at it. But they did, and that was that. So everything was back to normal. So we were going okay then. And after that, the next thing that happened in church was there was actually an appeal for people who wanted to actually go on this mission, to go on mission work. And myself and my girlfriend, who was my fiancée at that point, we went out, right? So anyway, so I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking, yeah, this is really good. I've been into aviation and quite experienced instruments and all that sort of thing. And I thought, yeah, right, I'm going to be flying airplanes, and I can do this. And I looked it up, and I could get a commercial license, but I had to do 2 years Bible college too. And I thought, this is completely ridiculous. I can't possibly do that, And many people around with lots of cash in the background that I didn't have, so I couldn't do it. So we just said, okay, we'll see what happens. And a job came up in Port Moresby in aircraft engineering. So I applied for that, and I didn't get all the information I wanted, so I wrote back, and some of it I